this "why do you care" about a tiny fraction of the population line is, and always was, utterly ridiculous. So began a comment posted on X by JK Rowling on 6th of February 2025, a comment consisting of 457 words in total, and which resonated so strongly with me that I decided to share the whole comment in a video. First, I'll read the rest of it, then I'll say a little bit about it. Gender ideology has undermined freedom of speech, scientific truth, gay rights, and women's and girls' safety, privacy, and dignity. It's also caused irreparable physical damage to vulnerable kids. Nobody voted for it. The vast majority of people disagree with it, yet it has been imposed top-down by politicians, healthcare bodies, academia, sections of the media, celebrities, and even the police. Its activists have threatened and enacted violence on those who've dared oppose it. People have been defamed and discriminated against for questioning it. Jobs have been lost and lives have been ruined, all for the crime of knowing that sex is real and matters. When the smoke clears, it will be only too evident that this was never about a so-called vulnerable minority, notwithstanding the fact that some very vulnerable people have been harmed. The power dynamics underpinning our society have been reinforced, not dismantled. The loudest voices throughout this entire fiasco have been people insulated from consequences by their wealth and or status. They aren't likely to find themselves locked in a prison cell with a 6'4" rapist who's decided his name's now Dolores. They don't need state-funded rape crisis centres, nor do they ever frequent high street changing rooms. They simper from talk show sofas about those nasty far-right bigots who don't want penises swinging around the girls' showers, secure in the knowledge that their private pool remains the safe place it always was. Those who've benefited most from gender identity ideology are men, both trans-identified and not. Some have been rewarded for having a cross-dressing kink by access to all spaces previously reserved for women. Others have parlayed their delicious new victim status into an excuse to threaten, assault, and harass women. Non-trans identified lefty bros have found a magnificent platform from which to display their own impeccably progressive credentials by jeering and sneering at the needs of women and girls, all while patting themselves on the back for giving away rights that aren't theirs. The actual victims in this mess have been women and children, especially the most vulnerable. Gay people who've resisted the movement and paid a horrible price, and regular people working in environments where one misplaced pronoun could see you vilified or constructively dismissed. Do not tell me this is about a tiny minority. This movement has impacted society in disastrous ways, and if you had any sense, you'd be quietly deleting every trace of activist mantras, ad hominem attacks, false equivalents, and circular arguments from your X feeds, because the day is fast approaching when you'll want to pretend you always saw through the craziness and never believed it for a second. Thank you, JK Rowling. That statement brought a lot of painful memories of the past 8 years to the surface. The effect that gender ideology has had on free speech has been so profound and pervasive. It's become normalised to a great extent, but it's always there, like a shadow hanging over me in everything I do. I couldn't even begin to count the ways in which free speech has been suppressed. I had to go back to my website at peaktrans.org and look at what I wrote when I first launched it all those years ago, at a time when I was still having trouble believing what was actually going on. On a page called Silencing, I began with a quote from this book, Female Erasure: What You Need to Know About Gender Politics, War on Women, the Female Sex, and Human Rights. That was one of the first books that I bought in order to get informed. It's a collection of essays edited by Ruth Barrett, and I quote, "We are in a new era of witch burning, except that today the fire is that of media and propaganda, with trans activists and their supporters suppressing any information that contradicts their goals and silencing their critics through oppressive tactics. Some of our contributors have been fired from teaching positions at universities. Some have been blacklisted. Others threatened with physical harm, rape, even death. All because they have questioned or challenged the idea that the cultural construct of gender should supplant biological sex. Others have been deplatformed as speakers at universities for expressing what should be a matter of common sense, that women, many of whom have been sexually assaulted by males, should have the right to shower, bathe, sleep, or organise free from the presence of males." Julie Bindel was the first person I heard of getting no platformed in British universities for daring to criticise gender ideology. It became NUS, National Union of Students, policy to no platform her back in 2009. I wrote on my site that when I was at college some 30 years earlier, there was a policy of no platforming racists and fascists, and that I had ambivalent feelings about that policy, coming, as I do, from an extended family that suffered greatly under a fascist regime in Europe. On the one hand, I always believed hearts and minds should be won by countering bad arguments based on prejudice and hatred and ignorance with good arguments based on truth and reason and evidence. On the other hand, I was quite relieved that I didn't have to waste my student years arguing with racists and fascists, because the fascist parties back then, like the National Front and the British National Party, had quite a lot of support. They could mobilise big marches in the 1970s, so not letting them come and speak at our colleges, so they just weren't an issue on campus, allowed me more time instead to fight small-minded, arrogant, sexist men who relished putting down and humiliating women at every opportunity. And it is beyond irony that all these decades later, nearly half a century, putting down and humiliating women is claimed as a human right, though of course they don't call it that when they charge into our changing rooms and watch young women stripping off. And of course, one of the ways they keep trying to put us down is by calling us fascists for objecting to them being there. Anyway, over the past decade, there have been many more people no platformed in the universities just for holding views that the trans lobby doesn't like, and there have been many more ways in which they have attempted to shut us up. Back in 2017, when I first got involved in all this, it really shocked and angered me to see so many young people trying to stop us from meeting to discuss proposed changes to legislation that would impact women directly and negatively. What did they hope to achieve? Especially in the internet era when, although it's nice to meet up in real life, it's not actually necessary to do so in order to communicate. But they would, and still do, so far as I know, target venues, and they did often succeed in getting venues to cancel our meetings at short notice, meetings around the country, by threatening to cause trouble. Though significantly, They never once, to my knowledge, managed to stop a meeting from taking place, because we always found another venue at very short notice. And all it did was make us angrier and more determined to fight back. Of course, if they couldn't force a venue to cancel us, they would congregate outside and try to intimidate people wanting to attend. They would bang drums and shout and try to make it as difficult as possible for people inside to talk and hear each other. Open-air meetings inevitably see crowds of them turning up to do the same thing. Heaven forbid that women should be free to talk about our lives, our experiences, our fears, our children, anything at all that is about us. They target debates at our top universities, they target films, they target comedy shows, they target literature festivals, they target libraries, bookshops, authors. Then, of course, there are the attempts to get us banned from every corner of the internet, every social media platform, including YouTube. I could spend all day listing the many ways in which they try to silence dissent. They are vicious, authoritarian bullies who don't have a prayer of beating us intellectually or ethically. Now, scientific truths. Well, that's something I've talked about quite a lot on this channel, and I will continue to do so. So I'm not going to bang on about it now. It is the last desperate straw to be clutched by people who are scientifically illiterate to claim that they have science on their side. No. What they have are a few ideologically captured scientists who are prepared to sacrifice their professional integrity in furtherance of men's sexual rights on their side. Same for the effects on women and girls' rights, not least lesbians. It's the main focus on my channel. I will continue to talk about the effects on women. I still await justification from those women, and especially those lesbians who turn out to bully other women in support of men's rights to declare themselves women. And I don't feel that I've talked enough about children, and that's something that is on the cards for this channel, though I have certainly talked about the negative impact that puberty blockers have had on young bodies. Says JK Rowling, nobody voted for it. The vast majority of people disagree with it. Well, it seems to me that in spite of everything that's been happening, the vast majority of people don't even think about it. They don't want to think about it. They feel unable to relate to it in any way, or possibly they are afraid to think about it because it will bring them into conflict with people they know and love who take a strong position one way or another. This feels very personal to me because I have put everything I can into this struggle over the past 8 years or so with zero support from certain quarters I would have expected it from. People with whom I am in total agreement, perfectly aligned on everything else. And it's not necessarily that they disagree with what I say. I don't think they even know what I say in any detail. They don't look at my website. They don't watch my videos. It just doesn't compute with me that people are still trying to ignore what's going on, especially given that it has been, as JK says, imposed top down by politicians, healthcare bodies, academia, sections of the media, celebrities, and even the police. I mean, personally, I have lost confidence in every sector because of this. I won't vote for any politician who doesn't state in no uncertain terms that gender ideology is wrong and must be defeated. I no longer trust or respect doctors very much. I am terrified about what sort of education my grandchildren are going to get, and I absolutely despise any celebrity that buys into this crap. And above all, I hate the police. I probably hate them more than anyone, actually, because They have shown time and time again that they are not impartial, and more often than not, they will come out and protect the bullies, even as they are bullying women. We've seen it in London, in Bristol, in Brighton. We've seen it all over the damn place. And on Saturday, we saw it in Nottingham again. Absolute scum. It's activists, as JK Rowling points out, have enacted violence on those who dared oppose it. Tell me about it. People have been defamed and discriminated against for questioning it. Jobs have been lost and lives have been ruined, all for the crime of knowing that sex is real and matters. Imagine that, eh? Losing your job, your livelihood, because you know men aren't women and women aren't men, and there is no possible justification in pretending otherwise. How many tribunals have we seen? How many have we won thanks to Maya Forstater? Yet most people still don't even know who she is. And I know that some people are still losing their jobs over this, and they are accepting that loss rather than go through the ordeal of a tribunal case. You know, the number of people I've had say to me over the years, oh, the tide seems to be turning, I think things are changing, things are getting better. Not people involved that are saying this, but people who know I'm involved say that. We are nowhere near the end of this war. And JK says, when the smoke clears, it will be only too evident that this was never about a so-called vulnerable minority, notwithstanding the fact that some very vulnerable people have been harmed. The power dynamics underpinning our society have been reinforced, not dismantled. The loudest voices throughout this entire fiasco have been people insulated from consequences by their wealth and or status. They aren't likely to find themselves locked in a prison cell with a 6'4" rapist called Dolores. Exactly. If I can rank the things in terms of how surprising I have found them in this war, I think that very fundamental lack of human empathy tops the poll, especially from women. It's destroyed my faith in humankind, to be honest, and certainly in humanism, as I said in a recent video. JK may be talking about wealthy men here, and of course it's never going to be a problem for them. It's never going to be a problem for Keir Starmer or Joe Biden. But someone like Nadia Whittome MP, who boasted on X that she had marched with the bullies against the women's rights activists at Nottingham on Saturday, she may well find herself in a changing room with a man. What's she going to do? Just hold her nose and strip off and tell herself it's okay because he's got a female brain? Enough already. I'll leave it there, I think, before my mood really starts to spiral out of control. Just to repeat the advice JK Rowling gives at the end. Take note, Nadia Whittome and the rest of you handmaids and sellouts. This movement has impacted society in disastrous ways, and if you had any sense, you'd be quietly deleting every trace of activist mantras, ad hominem attacks, false equivalents, and circular arguments from your X feeds. Because the day is fast approaching when you'll want to pretend that you always saw through the craziness and never believed it for a second. I've no doubt that day will come, and it can't come fast enough, but I just hope I live to see it.